This video is brought to you by Straight Goods News, Canada's alternative online news source. Visit straightgoods.ca.
And Canada's New Democrats stand with independent fishermen and will strongly oppose any move to eliminate the fleet separation and owner-operator policy. We believe that the minister must participate in open consultation and meet with all stakeholders, not just big businesses. Canada's New Democrats also stand with coastal communities on the East Coast who depend on this policy for their jobs and their livelihoods. Over 200 fishers protested last weekend in Newfoundland at the DFO headquarters over this issue and the lack of consultation, the lack of being included. Rather than consult with fishermen, the DFO was having an invitation-only closed-door meeting with large fish harvesters and processors. And this we find unacceptable.
As the former critic for the NDP over 13 years following the issue of fisheries and oceans, it alarms me greatly that the Government of Canada, the Conservatives, would actually entertain this type of idea of changing the owner-operator fleet separation policy. I remind everyone that the last great independent fishery that we have is that of the independent lobster fishery. Small boat fishermen coming from smaller communities throughout all of Atlantic Canada and Quebec, operating their vessels in order to make a living that they have for generations and generations after that. But what this policy will do, if enacted, it will destroy the independence of the inshore fishery and make whatever fishermen left sort of the old company store attitude in the old coal mines. And then what will happen is the corporate fleet will then take over and follow the sequence. Nothing stopping that corporate fleet, the corporation, from selling their interests, lock, stock, and barrel to any entity in the world. So you could conceivably have the fish that swim off the wharves of your community, or the lobster swimming in the bottom of those little ponds and those inlets and bays right along the coast of Atlantic Canada, controlled and operated by foreign interests. This is what this policy will lead to. I don't know why, for the life of me, why the Conservative Government of Canada has such a hate-on for independent fishermen and their families and their communities. Why does Stephen Harper and Keith Ashfield and the Conservative Party of Canada hate the fishermen so much that you won't even consult with them? You'll only consult with your corporate friends in this particular regard. We're asking that the Conservative government stop this process and consult completely true consultations with the inshore fishermen and their representatives in order to meet the needs and the concerns of today and tomorrow. These coastal communities and these fishermen and their families have every right to a common property resource. This is not a private resource. It is a common property resource to be managed by the government through Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And for them to take that common property resource away and turn it to their corporate friends, and thus international influence over the management and control of our fisheries, is unacceptable. And as my colleague, our critic for the federal NDP, Finn Donnelly, said, New Democrats will not accept this. And we will make it loud and clear that what the government is doing is wrong, wrong.
And I'm joining my colleagues because of the great importance of this issue to the people of my province of Newfoundland and Labrador. It's true of all of Eastern Canada, but this is coming as a great shock to fishermen, independent fishermen in my province, who over 200 of them met last Monday to discuss fisheries policies, and they are faced with a consultation, not with them, but with the select people who are not representative of independent fishermen, who appear to want to see this fleet separation policy gotten rid of. When asked specifically whether this was part of the plan of the government, the fishermen were told that everything is on the table. This is clearly what the industry is aiming at, to take this policy away. It's a policy that ensures that independent fisher and operator owners have access to the license, and they can't be owned by the processors. It's a simple separation of the harvesting from the processing. It's what allows the communities a connection with the fish in the sea. You take this away, and it becomes a corporate fishery controlled totally by the corporations, and as Peter said, could be sold to anybody. It's not no longer in the hands of independent fishermen. I can't understand why this government, as Peter says, hates fishermen. Independent fishermen are as important as independent farmers. They have been for centuries in Newfoundland and Labrador. Independent fishermen, there have been opportunities to free themselves from the control of the merchants, and this kind of independence is now threatened once again by a policy of a government that doesn't appear interested in consulting with them. While we heard a statement in the House a couple of days ago from the Minister of Fisheries, he was extending the online consultation till the middle of March. Well, hold on, folks. There has been no consultation with the fishermen, with the people who are directly dependent upon the resource for their livelihood. That has to happen. So we want to cancel this whole consultation. If there's going to be true consultation, it has to take place with the fishermen and their representatives throughout Atlantic Canada, not just Newfoundland and Labrador, but in Quebec, in the Île-de-Madeline, in Nova Scotia, and in New Brunswick. We want to see that happen before this even gets considered, because I think the fisheries minister needs to know how key and crucial this is to the lives and livelihood of the fishermen and harvesters in Newfoundland and Labrador and throughout Atlantic Canada. We think this is a totally wrong-headed policy, and it's inconceivable that this can proceed without the kind of involvement of the fishermen that you would expect from any government. And even the Conservative government, it's not. We would expect them as well as anybody else to do that. The fact that they're not doing that is actually a slap in the face to the fishermen and women of Eastern Canada to look at this policy, which is considered so vital and important, and treat it as if it's not. It's just a matter of government changing its mind.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Peter. Canada's New Democrats have long called for and fought for small-scale cooperative fisheries on the East Coast instead of corporate fishing fleets. We feel that would be bad for jobs and bad for fisheries management. We've seen the devastation caused on the West Coast in British Columbia, allowing larger concentrations of corporate businesses into the fishery. And New Democrats will not allow this to happen on the East Coast.
An idea that's been floated in a discussion paper, right? I mean, it seems like a little bit of a leap to say the government hates fishermen. I mean,
sure.
Language seems quite strong here.
I think it's a little stronger than just a discussion paper. They're actively meeting and consulting with processors. This is typical of this government. They make decisions after they've had closed-door consultation, and this is not the way to make decisions. So. We're saying to the minister, open if you're serious about this. If this is just truly a discussion paper, then open up the doors, include all the stakeholders, including the inshore fishers and others in the community that have a vested interest in this common property called our fishery. Peter, do you want to add some more?
And if I may say, I mean, the reality is they're saying that there's a problem within the inshore fishery. They're blaming the inshore fishermen for the problems of the fishery, and it's simple nonsense. I mean, fishermen for years and years, especially the small boat, I remember the days of the hook and line fishermen. They blamed them, the hook and line guys, for the depletion of fish stocks, and yet they let the foreign trawlers and the big factory trawlers to operate willy-nilly, and they blame the inshore fishermen for that. The hook and line guys. They blame the harpoon fishermen for the swordfish, for the decline of swordfish, yet not the longliners. They blame the harpoon guys. And now they're saying we have to do this. You don't have to do it. What you need to do is reinvest in those coastal communities. What you need to do is reinvest in the small boat fisherman to allow him a fair price for his return of his sweat and labor and what they do. And the reality is, why are they having these consultations in the first place with the corporate sector? You got to ask yourself why they're doing it. The government, for years, as long as I've been around, for years and years, has wanted to move to an ITQ system, individual transferable quotas, in order to corporatize the fishery. That's what they've been trying to do for many, many years. And the Department of Fisheries has been trying to move in that regard. Because you think about it, it is much easier to manage one corporation than it is 1,000 fishermen. On dumping day, down in the Yarmouth area, for example, literally hundreds and hundreds of fishermen go out to pursue the lobsters in order to make a living. Now imagine if you got rid of all those fishermen and just turned it over to a couple of big flat boats out there and allow them to fish it all. Much easier to manage. And this is really at the crux of what they're trying to do. And it's simply unacceptable. This is why we say, and I said I'm not apologetic for it, if the government truly loved the fishermen, if they truly liked the fishermen, one, they would have consulted with them, and two, they wouldn't pursue the changes to the owner-operator and fleet separation policy, because there's only one conclusion at the end that you can draw. They want to change that policy and turn it over to the corporate sector. And for Scott Armstrong and others to blame unions, I think it was the questioning statement, unions and associations for getting in the way, paraphrasing, mind you, I can't quite verbatim what he said, is simply unacceptable. The fishery can be a huge economic opportunity, as it has been for many, many years in the great province of Newfoundland, Labrador, and others. And for them to say that it isn't, just simply unacceptable. And you don't blame small boat fishermen for the decline of the fishery. It's not them that did it.